I'm Viola, 58 years old, and I always believed I'd raised my son Tyler to be an honest man. Since my husband died, our monthly family dinners were my greatest joy. So when Tyler called saying dinner was canceled because Amanda was sick, I immediately worried. I decided to bring some medicine to their house, never expecting what I'd discover would shatter my heart forever. Before we dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by someone you love. Trust me, what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about family. I never imagined I'd be sharing a story like this at my age. After 12 years as a widow, I had settled into a comfortable routine in my modest home in Connecticut. The neighborhood was peaceful, filled with retirees like myself and young families starting their journeys together. I had retired from teaching third grade 5 years ago, ending a 30-year career that I loved deeply. My classroom walls might be behind me, but the lessons I taught about honesty, respect, and integrity remained close to my heart. My son Tyler was my pride and joy. At 32, he had grown into a successful software engineer at a respected tech company. He had his father's intelligence and analytical mind, along with what I thought was my sense of compassion. I'd raised him alone since he was 20, after my husband Paul died unexpectedly from a heart attack. Those early years without Paul were difficult, but Tyler and I formed an unbreakable bond as we navigated our grief together. At least I thought it was unbreakable. Tyler met Amanda during a company retreat 3 years ago. She worked in the marketing department, a bright, ambitious woman with a contagious laugh and impeccable taste. I was thrilled when they started dating. Amanda seemed perfect for Tyler, bringing out a lighter side of him I hadn't seen since before his father died. Their wedding was intimate but elegant, just like Amanda herself. I cried tears of joy watching them exchange vows, believing that Paul would have been just as proud as I was. From the beginning, I tried to build a good relationship with Amanda. I wanted her to know that I respected their marriage and had no intention of being the intrusive mother-in-law that so many young women dread. I invited them over for dinner occasionally, but was careful not to impose on their busy lives. When they bought their first home last year, I helped them move in and brought homemade curtains for their living room windows as a housewarming gift. One tradition I particularly cherished was our monthly family dinner. Once a month, we would meet at Bellini's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown that had been Paul's favorite. The tradition started after Tyler graduated college when Paul was still alive. We continued it after Paul's death, and later Amanda joined us. It was my special treat, a way to stay connected to my family, while giving them something nice they might not splurge on themselves. I always insisted on paying using a portion of my teacher's pension and the life insurance money Paul left. It wasn't extravagant by any means, but it was meaningful to me to provide this small luxury for us all. For nearly 3 years, these dinners were the highlight of my month. We would laugh, share stories from work, and discuss everything from politics to the latest movies. I felt blessed to have such a wonderful relationship with my son and his wife. But looking back now, I can see the subtle changes that began about a year ago. It started with small things. Tyler called less frequently. Our weekly phone chats became bi-weekly, then monthly. When I called him, he often seemed distracted or in a hurry. Amanda, who used to send me funny text messages or pictures of their cat Mittens, gradually stopped reaching out. At our monthly dinners, they started arriving late and leaving early, always with a reasonable excuse about work or other commitments. I tried not to take it personally. They were building their own lives after all. I remembered how Paul and I had needed space from our own parents when we were newlyweds. Still, a nagging feeling of disconnection grew. When I shared photos of Paul during one dinner, hoping to tell Amanda stories about the wonderful man who would have been her father-in-law, she seemed disinterested, checking her phone repeatedly. Tyler quickly changed the subject to their upcoming kitchen renovation. If only I had paid more attention to these warning signs, perhaps what happened wouldn't have been such a devastating shock. But I chose to see what I wanted to see: a loving son and daughter-in-law who were simply busy with their own lives. The pain of missing Paul never truly went away, but it had softened over the years. I kept his memory alive through small rituals, like wearing his favorite scent on our anniversary, or making his secret recipe lasagna on his birthday. Tyler had inherited his father's compassionate eyes and thoughtful nature. Whenever Tyler helped an elderly neighbor with yard work or stayed late to mentor a new colleague, I saw Paul's influence shining through. This made what eventually happened all the more bewildering and painful. Amanda had initially seemed genuinely interested in learning about Paul. During their engagement, she asked to see our wedding album and listened attentively as I shared stories about our life together. She even incorporated a small tribute to Paul in their wedding ceremony, which moved Tyler and me to tears. Those early days gave me such hope for a close relationship with my new daughter-in-law. We had lovely moments together, Amanda and I. We spent a day antiquing for items for their new home, laughing as we haggled with shop owners. She helped me set up my first smartphone and patiently showed me how to use social media to stay connected with former colleagues. When my sister was diagnosed with breast cancer 2 years ago, Amanda brought over a care package for me to send and offered to accompany me on the visit. Those memories made it all the harder to accept the changes in her behavior toward me. The warmth in her eyes when she greeted me had cooled. Her hugs became brief and perfunctory. At restaurants, she would sit angled slightly away from me, her body language subtly excluding me from the conversation. There were other signs too subtle enough that I dismissed them at the time. Once I overheard her on the phone saying, "We have that thing with Viola tonight." Her voice tinged with what sounded like annoyance. Another time, she declined my invitation to a community theater production, only for me to see on her social media that she had gone to a bar with friends that same evening. I chalked it up to the natural distance that sometimes develops between in-laws. I told myself not to be sensitive or demanding. My friends warned me not to become the stereotypical clingy mother who couldn't let go of her son. So I backed off, gave them space, and treasured our monthly dinners, all the more for their rarity. If only I had known what was really happening behind my back. The morning of our scheduled dinner began like any other. I woke up early feeling excited about seeing Tyler and Amanda. These dinners were the anchors in my calendar events I looked forward to for weeks. I took extra care with my appearance that day, putting on light makeup and styling my silver hair the way Paul always liked it. I chose a navy blue dress I had recently purchased, specifically for these occasions, along with the pearl necklace Tyler had given me for my 55th birthday. While getting ready, I hummed along to the oldies station on the radio, my spirits high. The previous week, I had been browsing a boutique downtown when I spotted a beautiful silk scarf in Amanda's favorite colors. It wasn't her birthday or any special occasion, but I couldn't resist buying it for her. I had wrapped it carefully in tissue paper and placed it in a small gift bag, excited to see her reaction. But the real surprise I was saving was much bigger. After years of careful saving, I had finally booked a 2-week trip to Europe. Paul and I had always dreamed of visiting Italy, France, and England together. After his death, I had put those dreams aside. Now, 12 years later, I felt ready to fulfill that promise to him, and I wanted to share the experience with Tyler and Amanda. I had reserved 3 spots on a guided tour scheduled for the following summer. I planned to present them with the itinerary over dessert, imagining their surprised faces and enthusiastic responses. The day passed pleasantly as I prepared for dinner. I watered my garden, chatted with a neighbor, and even baked cookies to bring home for Tyler, remembering how much he loved having something sweet for breakfast. Around 3 o'clock, I started getting ready, allowing plenty of time to look my best. Our reservation was for 6, and Bellini's was about 30 minutes from my home. At 4:15, just as I was putting the finishing touches on my makeup, my phone rang. Tyler's name flashed on the screen, and I answered with a smile. "Hello, sweetheart. I'm almost ready for dinner. Do you want me to bring those photo albums you asked about last time?" There was a slight pause before Tyler responded, his voice sounding oddly strained. "Actually, Mom, that's why I'm calling. We need to cancel tonight." My smile faded as disappointment washed over me. "Oh, is everything okay?" "Amanda's not feeling well," he explained quickly. "She's been sick all day with some kind of stomach bug. She's really upset about missing dinner, but she can barely get out of bed." "Oh, poor thing," I said, genuine concern replacing my disappointment. "That's awful. What are her symptoms? Has she seen a doctor?" "No, doctor. It's just a bug, I'm sure. Fever, nausea, you know the drill. His words came out rushed, almost rehearsed. In the background, I thought I heard muffled voices, and what sounded like laughter quickly hushed. Is someone there with you? I asked. What? No, just the TV. I was watching something while Amanda rests. He cleared his throat. Anyway, I'm really sorry about dinner, Mom. We'll reschedule for next month, okay? Something didn't feel right about the conversation. Tyler seemed eager to end the call, and his explanation felt hollow somehow. Still, I had no reason to doubt him. Amanda could very well be sick, and my son was taking care of his wife just as he should. Of course we can reschedule, I assured him. But listen, I have some homemade chicken soup in the freezer. Why don't I bring it over? I could pick up some medicine too. What does she need? No. The forceful rejection surprised me. Tyler immediately softened his tone. I mean, that's really nice of you, Mom, but it's not necessary. Amanda just needs rest, that's all. No visitors. She's pretty miserable right now. Well, I wouldn't stay, I persisted, maternal instinct kicking in. I could just drop it at the door. Mom, please. Tyler sounded exasperated now. We've got everything under control. Amanda will be fine in a day or two. Let's just plan for next month, okay? I surrendered with a sigh. All right, dear. Tell Amanda I hope she feels better soon. Call me tomorrow with an update. Sure thing, Mom. Love you. Gotta go check on her now. The call ended abruptly, leaving me staring at my phone with a strange sense of unease. I sat on the edge of my bed, still fully dressed for an evening that wouldn't happen. Something about the call didn't sit right with me. There had definitely been voices in the background, and Tyler's refusal of help seemed oddly vehement. In all the years I'd known my son, he had never turned down my homemade chicken soup during illness. It was our family's cure, all a tradition passed down from my grandmother. I glanced at the gift bag containing Amanda's scarf, and then at my purse, where I had tucked the Europe trip itinerary. All my excitement for the evening had evaporated, replaced by a hollow feeling of disappointment and confusion. Yet beneath these emotions stirred something else, a faint suspicion I couldn't quite name. I decided to defrost the chicken soup anyway. Even if Tyler had refused my offer, my instincts as a mother and former nurse's aide during college compelled me to do something. Amanda was family after all, and family takes care of each other during illness. I would bring some soup and medicine and leave it on their porch if they didn't want me to come in. As I moved around the kitchen, warming the soup and packing it into a container, that unsettled feeling persisted. I recalled other recent interactions with Tyler and Amanda, noting a pattern of canceled plans and abbreviated phone calls. Was there something deeper happening that I hadn't recognized? Or was I simply being an overprotective mother, unable to accept that my adult son had his own life now? By 5:30, I had changed into more casual clothes, packed a care package with soup, ginger ale crackers, and over-the-counter medicines for various symptoms. I even included the gift I had bought for Amanda, thinking it might cheer her up. With the care package loaded in my car, I began the 20-minute drive to their suburban home, still debating whether I was being helpful or intrusive. I pulled into Tyler and Amanda's neighborhood just after 6, the time we were supposed to meet at Bellini's. Their house was in a new development, a 2-story colonial style with pristine landscaping that Amanda took great pride in maintaining. As I turned onto their street, I immediately noticed something odd. Both cars were missing from the driveway. My first thought was that perhaps Amanda had taken a turn for the worse and Tyler had rushed her to the hospital. Concern flooded through me as I parked at the curb and quickly called Tyler's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I tried Amanda's with the same result. My worry deepened. I approached their front door with the care package in hand, noticing that the house was completely dark. No lights shone from any windows, unusual for early evening. I rang the doorbell and waited, listening for any movement inside. Nothing. I knocked and called out, "Tyler, Amanda, it's Mom." Silence answered me. I stood there for several moments, indecision washing over me. If they had gone to the hospital, they might need support. If Amanda was truly ill, where had they gone? I set the care package down on the covered porch, tucking it beside the door where they would see it upon return. I left a note explaining the contents and asking them to call me as soon as possible. Back in my car, I pulled out my phone again, worried enough now to consider calling local hospitals. Before I could dial, however, a notification caught my eye. A mutual friend had tagged Amanda in a social media post just 15 minutes ago. Curious, I opened the app and froze at what I saw. It was a photo of Amanda looking radiant and healthy in a blue dress I had never seen before. She was smiling broadly, raising a wine glass in what appeared to be Bellini's, our restaurant. The caption read, "Thursday night tradition with the best crew, blessed, family time." My hands began to tremble as I enlarged the image. In the background, partially cropped out but unmistakable, was Tyler's profile. They were at our restaurant at the time of our canceled dinner with other people I didn't recognize. A cold realization washed over me. There was no stomach bug. Amanda wasn't sick. They had lied to me deliberately to avoid dinner with me while still enjoying the very restaurant we were supposed to share together. For several minutes, I sat in my car, unable to process the betrayal I felt. Questions raced through my mind. How long had this been happening? Who were they with instead? Why would they lie, rather than simply tell me they wanted to change our arrangement? The hurt was profound, but something else was building within me, a determination to understand the full extent of this deception. I started my car and pulled away from their empty house. I knew exactly where I was going. The drive to Bellini's was a blur, my mind racing with possibilities and painful realizations. Perhaps this was a one-time occurrence. Maybe they had made plans with friends and felt too guilty to tell me they wanted to skip our dinner this month. I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt, even as the evidence suggested a more deliberate betrayal. When I arrived at the restaurant parking lot, my heart sank further. Tyler's distinctive blue sedan with the university alumni sticker on the back window was parked near the entrance. I found a spot at the far end of the lot, giving me a moment to collect my thoughts and decide how to proceed. With a deep breath, I stepped out of my car and walked toward the restaurant entrance. Through the large windows, I could see the warm lighting and elegant decor that had made this Paul's favorite place. As I approached the door, I steeled myself for what I might discover inside. The maitre d' recognized me immediately. "Mrs. Harrison, we weren't expecting you tonight. Your son's party arrived about an hour ago." "My son's party?" I echoed, my suspicions deepening. "Yes, the usual table for 6. Would you like me to tell them you're here?" 6 people. Not just Tyler and Amanda, but a full party of 6 people, while I sat home alone believing my daughter-in-law was too ill to leave her bed. "No, thank you," I replied quietly. "I'll just go over myself." He nodded and returned to his podium as I made my way through the dimly lit restaurant, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew exactly which table he meant, the corner booth near the windows that had been our table since Tyler was in college. As I approached, I could hear laughter and animated conversation. Then I saw them. Tyler and Amanda sat side by side facing an older couple I recognized as Amanda's parents. Beside them was another couple about Tyler and Amanda's age I didn't know. The table was laden with expensive dishes and several bottles of wine far pricier than what we typically ordered at our family dinners. I stood frozen several feet away, close enough to see, but not yet noticed by them. Amanda was radiant, nothing like someone suffering from a stomach bug. She was gesturing enthusiastically as she told a story, occasionally touching Tyler's arm. My son looked relaxed and happy, more animated than I had seen him in months during our dinners together. Then I caught fragments of their conversation that shattered any remaining doubt about the deliberate nature of their deception. "Thank goodness we dodged another boring dinner with Viola," Amanda's mother said, her voice carrying just enough for me to hear. "These Thursday evenings are so much more enjoyable without having to watch every word we say." Tyler laughed uncomfortably. "Mom's not so bad. She just likes to reminisce a lot." "About your father, you mean?" Amanda interjected with an eye roll. "Every single dinner turns into a memorial service. It's been 12 years she needs to move on." "Well, at least her credit card doesn't mind picking up the tab," the unknown man joked, raising his wine glass. "Here's to Viola's generous contribution to our Thursday tradition." My blood ran cold. Thursday tradition. This wasn't a one-time occurrence, and they were using my credit card. I must have made a sound because suddenly Amanda looked up and spotted me, her face drained of color. "Viola," she whispered, causing the entire table to turn in my direction. The laughter stopped instantly. 6 pairs of eyes stared at me in shock, and in that moment, I knew my relationship with my son and his wife would never be the same again. The silence that enveloped our corner of the restaurant was deafening. For what felt like an eternity, no one moved or spoke. Tyler's face had gone ghostly white, his mouth opening and closing without producing any sound. Amanda appeared frozen, the wine glass still suspended mid-air in her hand. Her parents exchanged worried glances, while the unknown couple shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, keeping my voice deliberately calm, despite the storm raging inside me. "Good evening, everyone. What a surprise to find you all here." Amanda was the first to recover, setting down her glass with a shaking hand. "Viola, what a, coincidence. I was just starting to feel better, so we decided to come to our restaurant." I finished for her, emphasizing the word our, at our regular time, with additional guests. Tyler finally found his voice, though it cracked with obvious panic. "Mom, I can explain. Amanda was feeling sick earlier, but then she improved suddenly, and her parents were in town unexpectedly, so we thought—" "Tyler," I interrupted gently, "please don't make this worse by continuing to lie." Amanda's mother, Caroline, a sleek, well-preserved woman in her 60s, who had always regarded me with thinly veiled condescension, straightened in her seat. "Viola, this is a private family dinner. I'm not sure why you're making such a scene." "A family dinner," I repeated slowly, looking directly at Tyler. "I see." "These are my cousins, Natalie and Derek," Amanda interjected quickly, gesturing to the unknown couple. "They're visiting from Seattle. We wanted to treat them to a nice dinner." I nodded, taking in this information, while noticing the elaborate spread on the table. Prime steaks, seafood towers, and bottles of wine I recognized as costing over $100 each. Far more extravagant than anything we ordered during our usual dinners. "And how are you feeling now, Amanda?" I asked, my gaze steady. "Your stomach bug seems to have made a miraculous recovery." Amanda flushed her eyes, darting to Tyler for help. "I was feeling terrible earlier, but then I took some medicine and started feeling much better, so instead of calling to let me know our dinner could proceed as planned, you decided to come anyway, with other people." My voice remained calm, though my heart was racing. "Now listen here." Amanda's father, Richard, a stern businessman with silver hair and cold eyes, leaned forward. "The kids don't need to report their every move to you. They're adults with their own lives." "You're absolutely right, Richard," I agreed. "They are adults. Adults who apparently need to lie to avoid having dinner with me, while still using my credit card to fund an even more expensive meal with others." A stunned silence followed this statement. Tyler's face crumpled in guilt, confirming my suspicion before he even spoke. "Your credit card?" Amanda's cousin Natalie asked, looking confused. "I thought Tyler was paying." "Mom, it's not what you think," Tyler began desperately. "Then what is it exactly?" I asked, my composure beginning to crack. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been canceling our family dinners to have more elaborate ones with Amanda's family charging it all to me." Amanda's mother scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous. Tyler wouldn't do that." "Tyler." I addressed my son directly, ignoring the others. "Do you have my credit card with you? The one I gave you for emergencies?" The guilt in his eyes told me everything. Slowly he reached for his wallet and withdrew a credit card, a platinum card with my name embossed on it. "May I see it, please?" I extended my hand, surprised at how steady it remained despite my inner turmoil. Tyler hesitated, then reluctantly placed the card in my palm. I turned it over, examining it as if seeing it for the first time, though I had given it to him years ago for genuine emergencies or to pick up necessities for me when I was recovering from knee surgery. "How long has this been happening?" I asked quietly. No one answered. The silence was damning. How long? I repeated, my voice firmer this time. Tyler stared at the table. About 6 months, he finally admitted. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. 6 months. Half a year of deliberate deception. All those times they had claimed to be busy, or Amanda had been sick, or work had kept them late, they had been here instead with Amanda's family, charging exorbitant meals to my account. I see. I turned to the waiter who had appeared nearby, clearly unsure whether to approach given the obvious tension. Excuse me, could I see the bill for this table, please? Mom, don't, Tyler pleaded. I think I have a right to see what I'm paying for, don't you? My voice was gentle but firm. The waiter glanced uncertainly between us before nodding and hurrying away. Amanda's father cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. This is unnecessary, Viola. If there's been a misunderstanding about payment, we can cover tonight's bill. This isn't about tonight, Richard. This is about 6 months of deliberate deception. I kept my gaze fixed on Tyler. I'm trying to understand why. Was I such terrible company that you needed to lie to avoid me? Couldn't you have simply told me you wanted to change our arrangement? Tyler couldn't meet my eyes. We didn't want to hurt your feelings. So you thought lying and stealing from me would hurt less when I inevitably found out? I asked. We were going to pay you back, Amanda interjected quickly. We've just been having some financial issues with the new house, and so you decided to solve them by charging expensive dinners to my card? Dinners I wasn't even invited to. The hurt in my voice was unmistakable now. The waiter returned with the bill, handing it to me with an apologetic glance. I examined the total, a staggering $473 for just one meal. Scanning the itemized list, I noted charges for top-shelf liquor, premium steaks, and a dessert sampler that cost more than what I typically spent on groceries for an entire week. Is this typical of your Thursday gatherings? I asked, passing the bill to Tyler. He nodded miserably. More or less. A quick mental calculation made my stomach churn. If they had been doing this monthly for 6 months, they had charged thousands of dollars to my account without my knowledge or consent. Money from my limited retirement funds that I had carefully budgeted and saved. I'd like to speak with the manager, please, I said to the waiter. Mom, please don't make a scene, Tyler whispered urgently. I raised an eyebrow. I'm not making a scene, Tyler. I'm simply trying to understand the scope of what's been happening behind my back. The restaurant manager, Antonio, appeared quickly. He had known me for years and looked concerned. Is everything all right, Mrs. Harrison? Actually, no, Antonio. I was hoping you could help me with something. My credit card has apparently been used here regularly on Thursday evenings for the past several months. Would it be possible to check your records and tell me how many times and the total amount? Antonio looked uncomfortable but nodded. Of course. Give me a few moments. As he walked away, Amanda's mother leaned forward. Viola, this is hardly the place for such a discussion. Perhaps we should all take some time to cool off and talk about this privately. I disagree, Caroline. I think this is exactly the place for this discussion, since this is where my son and daughter-in-law have been entertaining you at my expense while lying to my face. The cousin's husband, Derek, cleared his throat. Maybe we should go. This seems like a family matter. No, please stay, I said with a sad smile. Apparently you're more family than I am these days. Antonio returned with a printed sheet of paper which he handed to me discreetly. These are the charges on your card for the past 6 months, Mrs. Harrison. There have been 8 dinner reservations under Tyler's name, all on Thursday evenings. I scanned the document, each line item driving the knife deeper. 8 dinners with totals ranging from $300 to nearly $600 each. In total, over $3,000 had been charged to my card without my knowledge. Thank you, Antonio, I said quietly. I'd like to report these as unauthorized charges, please. All except tonight's bill. Tyler's head snapped up. Mom, no, that could get me in trouble. Yes, it could. I agreed, feeling a strange calm despite the situation. Fraud usually does. Now wait just a minute, Richard blustered. You gave him that card. You can't claim fraud now just because you're upset. Actually, Richard, I gave him this card for emergencies and specific purchases on my behalf, not to fund lavish family dinners while lying to me about his wife being ill. I turned back to Antonio. I'd like tonight's bill transferred to Tyler's card, please, and I need to report the previous charges as unauthorized. Antonio nodded solemnly. Of course, Mrs. Harrison. I'll take care of it right away. As he left, I pulled out my phone and called my credit card company right there at the table. In a clear, steady voice, I reported the card as compromised and requested a replacement. I confirmed that I would be disputing specific charges once the investigation began. Throughout this process, the table remained silent, watching me with varying expressions of shock, embarrassment, and in Tyler's case, growing panic. When I finished the call, I slipped the phone back into my purse and looked around at each face. I want you all to know that I'm not doing this out of vindictiveness. I'm doing it because trust has been broken in a fundamental way, and there need to be consequences for that breach. I turned specifically to Tyler, my heart breaking at the fear in his eyes. I had planned to surprise you tonight with something special. I booked a 2-week trip to Europe for the 3 of us next summer. Italy, France, and England, all the places your father and I dreamed of seeing together. I was going to give you the itinerary over dessert. Tyler's face crumbled. Mom, that trip is canceled now. Not as punishment, but because I can no longer trust that you value my company or respect me enough to be honest. Standing up straight, I gathered my purse and the canceled credit card. I'll be making some other changes as well. I'll need back my spare house key. I'll be consulting with my attorney about removing you as my medical proxy and power of attorney, and I'll be revising my will. Amanda gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Viola, please, this is getting out of hand. No, Amanda. What got out of hand was the systematic deception you and Tyler orchestrated. What's happening now are the natural consequences of those choices. I turned to leave, then paused, looking back at the stunned group one last time. Oh, and Richard Caroline, your daughter's boring mother-in-law who needs to move on from her husband's death. You might want to consider that in some states, knowingly benefiting from financial exploitation of an elderly person is considered a form of elder abuse. Something to think about before your next expensive dinner. With that parting shot, I walked away from the table, head held high despite the tears threatening to spill. I could feel their shocked stares following me, but no one called out or tried to stop me. The restaurant had grown oddly quiet, other diners sensing the drama unfolding, but unable to hear the devastating details. Outside in the cool evening air, I finally allowed myself a moment of weakness. Leaning against my car, I took several deep breaths, fighting back the tears that burned behind my eyes. The betrayal cut deep, not just from Tyler and Amanda, but from the realization that I had been so easily deceived by those I trusted most. As I drove home in silence, one thought kept circling in my mind. How do you begin to rebuild your life when the foundation you thought was solid turns out to be built on lies? The days following that devastating dinner passed in a blur of hurt anger and painful realizations. When I arrived home that night, my phone was already filling with frantic text messages and missed calls from Tyler. I silenced it, needing space to process what had happened before I could even think about responding. Tyler's first message was a desperate plea. Mom, I'm so sorry. Please answer your phone. We need to talk about this. This was followed by increasingly panicked texts. Mom, the bank called about fraud alerts. Please don't do this. We never meant to hurt you. It just happened once and then spiraled. Amanda is crying. Her parents feel terrible. Please call me back. I let them all go unanswered, unable to formulate a response that wouldn't be fueled by raw emotion. What could I possibly say to my son, who had systematically lied to me for months, who had used my generosity against me, who had made me into an unwitting joke among his in-laws? Amanda sent her own messages, each one deflecting responsibility. Viola, this is all a huge misunderstanding. It was Tyler's idea to use your card, not mine. My parents had no idea the dinners were being charged to you. Please don't blame me for this. I tried to tell Tyler it wasn't right. Her attempts to distance herself from the deception only deepened my hurt. In all our time as family, I had never witnessed Amanda take responsibility for anything that went wrong. It was always someone else's fault, someone else's idea, someone else's mistake. The next morning, my longtime friend Judith called. She had been my confidant since Paul's death, a fellow widow who understood the unique loneliness that comes with losing a spouse. "Tyler just called me," she said without preamble. "He's worried sick about you, says you discovered some financial issue and are threatening legal action. What's going on, Vi?" I told her everything. The lies, the secret dinners, the thousands of dollars charged to my account, the cruel comments I had overheard. As I spoke, the hurt bubbled up again, threatening to overwhelm me. "Oh, honey," Judith sighed when I finished. "I'm so sorry they did this to you. What a terrible betrayal." "Am I overreacting?" I asked, suddenly uncertain. "Tyler keeps saying it just happened once and then spiraled. Maybe I should hear him out." "Viola Harrison." Judith's voice turned stern. "This didn't just happen. They made conscious choices month after month to lie to you and take advantage of your generosity. Don't let them minimize this. You have every right to be hurt and angry." Her validation steadied me. "I just don't understand why. If they didn't want to have dinner with me, they could have just said so. I'm a big girl. I could have handled it." "Because this way they got to have their cake and eat it too," Judith pointed out. "They avoided the dinners with you while still enjoying expensive meals on your dime. And they likely would have continued indefinitely if you hadn't caught them." She was right, of course. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It was an ongoing deception that required planning and coordination. They had created elaborate lies, maintained them for months, and roped in Amanda's family as willing participants. That afternoon, I called a locksmith to change the locks on my house. Tyler had a key for emergencies, just as I had given him my credit card for emergencies. Both privileges had been abused, and both needed to be revoked. The locksmith, an older gentleman named Frank, worked quickly and efficiently. As he installed the new deadbolt, he made casual conversation. "Changing locks usually means something big happened. Everything okay, ma'am?" I gave him a simplified version. "Found out someone I trusted was using my key when they shouldn't have been." He nodded sagely. "Happens more often than you'd think. Family, right? They're the ones who can hurt us the worst." His words stayed with me long after he left. Family. The people who should protect us, support us, love us unconditionally, were indeed the ones with the greatest power to wound. Tyler had been my world after Paul died. I had poured everything into raising him, supporting him, cheering him on. The thought that he could so casually disregard that love and sacrifice was almost too painful to bear. The next step was harder. I called my attorney, Malcolm Green, who had handled Paul's estate and had been advising me on financial matters for years. His secretary scheduled an appointment for the following day. Malcolm's office was comfortingly familiar, a wood-paneled sanctuary of legal expertise that had guided me through some of the most difficult transitions in my life. He listened without interruption as I explained what had happened, taking occasional notes, but mostly watching me with compassionate attention. "I want to remove Tyler as my power of attorney and medical proxy," I concluded. "And I need to revise my will. I'm not disinheriting him completely, but I need to protect myself." Malcolm nodded, his expression grave. "These changes are certainly warranted given the circumstances, Viola. But before we proceed, I have to ask, have you spoken with Tyler since the incident?" "No," I admitted. "I'm not ready. Everything I want to say comes from anger right now, and that won't help either of us." "Understandable. But at some point a conversation will be necessary, especially about the credit card charges. Have you filed a police report?" The question caught me off guard. "A police report?" "No, I disputed the charges with the credit card company, but I haven't gone to the police." Malcolm leaned forward, his expression serious. "Viola, what Tyler did constitutes fraud. The credit card company will likely require a police report to fully investigate and reverse the charges. They may even pursue criminal charges independently." The thought of my son facing criminal charges sent a chill through me. Despite everything, he was still my child. "I don't want Tyler arrested," I said quietly. "I just want my money back and for him to understand the severity of what he did." "That's your choice," Malcolm assured me. But legally, this is more than a family dispute. What if this happens to someone else? What if Amanda's parents were complicit? These are serious considerations. We spent the next hour discussing my options and drafting the necessary paperwork to change my power of attorney and medical directives. Malcolm also suggested a revocable trust to protect my assets while giving me greater control over how and when Tyler might access any inheritance. As I drove home from the attorney's office, I decided to make one more stop. The local branch of my bank welcomed me warmly. The staff knew me from years of weekly visits. The manager, Mrs. Chen, ushered me into her office when I asked to speak privately. "I need to review all my accounts and credit card statements for the past year," I explained, "and I may need to make some changes to my account access." Mrs. Chen's expression grew concerned as I briefly outlined what had happened. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Harrison. Unfortunately, this type of financial exploitation isn't uncommon even among family members." She helped me audit every account, identifying several other suspicious transactions beyond the restaurant charges, online purchases, and cash withdrawals I had never authorized. The total amount was staggering, nearly $5,000 when everything was tallied. "I recommend filing a police report," Mrs. Chen advised, echoing Malcolm's suggestion. "Without it, recovering these funds could be difficult." I nodded, feeling numb. "I'll think about it. For now, I want to close all existing accounts and open new ones with enhanced security. And I need to remove Tyler's name from everything." By the time I arrived home, exhaustion had settled deep in my bones. The emotional toll of the betrayal, combined with the practical steps needed to protect myself, had drained every ounce of energy. I sank onto my sofa, staring at the framed family photos on my mantel. Tyler's graduation, his wedding day, the three of us at Christmas last year, all moments I had treasured as evidence of our loving family bond. How much of it had been real? How long had the resentment been building? Was I truly the burden they had made me out to be? Or was their cruelty simply a justification for their greed? As darkness fell outside my window, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not delicate tears, but deep, racking sobs that came from the very core of my being. I cried for the relationship I thought I had with my son, for the trust that had been shattered, for the loneliness that stretched before me. Most of all, I cried for Paul, wishing desperately that he were here to help me navigate this heartbreak. "What would you do, Paul?" I whispered into the empty room. "How do I love our son while holding him accountable? How do I move forward from here?" The silence offered no answers, but the release of emotion provided its own kind of clarity. As my tears subsided, I realized that despite everything, I wasn't truly alone. I had Judith and other friends who cared for me. I had resources and the strength to protect myself. Most importantly, I had survived devastating loss before and emerged intact. This betrayal, painful as it was, would not break me. My phone buzzed with yet another text from Tyler. "Mom, please, just tell me you're okay. I'm worried about you." For the first time in days, I responded with a simple message. "I'm safe. I need time. Please respect that." Then I turned off my phone, made myself a cup of tea, and began the slow process of reimagining my life without the certainties I had counted on just days before. As days turned into weeks, my initial shock and raw pain gradually transformed into something more complex, a mixture of grief, anger, and a surprising sense of clarity about my relationship with Tyler and Amanda. I maintained minimal contact with them, responding to Tyler's increasingly desperate messages, with brief assurances that I was all right, but needed space to process what had happened. The practical aspects of protecting myself financially and legally provided a much-needed focus for my energy. Within 2 weeks, I had successfully disputed the fraudulent charges with my credit card company, opened new bank accounts with enhanced security measures, changed all my passwords, and finalized the paperwork, removing Tyler as my power of attorney and medical proxy. I named Judith instead, knowing she would honor my wishes without question. What I hadn't expected was how word of the situation would spread through our extended family and social circles. My sister-in-law, Marianne, called from Arizona, her voice tight with concern. Vi, what's going on with you and Tyler? He called me in tears, saying you're threatening to disinherit him over some misunderstanding about dinner. I sighed, unsurprised that Tyler was already trying to control the narrative. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Marianne. Tyler and Amanda have been systematically lying to me for 6 months, canceling our family dinners, while still going to the restaurant with Amanda's parents and charging thousands of dollars to my credit card. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Finally, Marianne whispered, "Oh my God, Paul would be heartbroken." "I know," I admitted, my voice catching. "I keep wondering where I went wrong, how I raised a son who could do this." "This isn't on you, Viola," Marianne said firmly. "Tyler is an adult who made his own choices, terrible choices. And Amanda, well, I never wanted to say anything, but there was always something about that girl that didn't sit right with me." Her validation was comforting, especially coming from Paul's sister. As more friends and family members learned what had happened, most expressed shock and support for my position. A few suggested I was overreacting, or that families should always forgive, but they were in the minority. One unexpected source of support came from my former teaching colleagues. After hearing about my situation, they organized a weekly lunch group to ensure I wasn't isolating myself. These gatherings became a lifeline, filling the void left by the monthly family dinners I had lost. During one such lunch, my friend Elaine mentioned a support group for older adults who had experienced financial exploitation by family members. "It might help to talk with others who've been through similar situations," she suggested gently. Initially reluctant, I eventually attended a meeting held at a local community center. The stories I heard there were both heartbreaking and validating. Men and women most my age or older shared experiences of children, grandchildren, or other relatives who had abused their trust in ways that ranged from borrowing money with no intention of repayment to outright theft of retirement funds. Gloria, a elegant woman in her 70s, had discovered her son emptying her bank account to support a gambling addiction. Martin, a retired postal worker, had signed over the deed to his house to help his daughter avoid foreclosure, only to be evicted when she sold the property without his knowledge. Each story contained echoes of my own experience: the shock, the shame, the struggle to reconcile love for family with the need for self-protection. "The hardest part," Gloria confided during my second meeting, "is accepting that forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation. I love my son, but I can't have him in my life right now. Maybe never again. And that's okay." Her words resonated deeply. I had been struggling with exactly this question: how to process my love for Tyler, while acknowledging that our relationship had been fundamentally altered by his actions. The group helped me see that holding him accountable wasn't cruel or unforgiving. It was necessary for my own well-being, and potentially for his growth. Meanwhile, Amanda had stopped reaching out entirely, her initial flurry of defensive messages giving way to complete silence. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that she and Tyler were having serious marital difficulties in the aftermath of the restaurant confrontation. Apparently, their financial situation was more precarious than I had realized, with significant debt from their home purchase and Amanda's shopping habits stretching their budget to the breaking point. This information didn't excuse their behavior, but it provided some context for their desperation to maintain appearances. They had been living beyond their means, using my credit card to fund a lifestyle they couldn't afford, while presenting an image of success to Amanda's parents and their social circle. About 3 months after the incident, I received something unexpected in the mail: a handwritten letter from Tyler, along with a check for $4,000. "Dear Mom," the letter began, "I know no amount of money can undo the hurt I've caused, but this is the first installment in paying back what I took from you. Amanda and I have sold some things and taken on extra work to make this payment. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm taking responsibility for my actions. What I did was wrong, period. No excuses. When you're ready, I would like to meet in person to apologize properly. With all my love and deepest regret, Tyler." The letter left me with conflicted emotions. On one hand, it seemed Tyler was finally acknowledging the gravity of his actions without deflection or minimization. On the other hand, was repayment, and an apology enough to rebuild the trust that had been so thoroughly broken. After consulting with Judith and my support group, I decided to take a small step toward communication. I deposited the check and sent Tyler a brief email. I received your letter and payment. I appreciate that you're taking responsibility. I'm still processing everything, but I would be willing to meet for coffee next week. Just you, not Amanda. Neutral location. Let me know what day works for you. Mom. His response came within minutes, suggesting a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. He offered to come to me, but I preferred the neutrality of a public space where neither of us would have the home court advantage. The day of our meeting arrived with surprising swiftness. I dressed carefully in a casual but put-together outfit, wanting to project strength rather than vulnerability. As I drove to the cafe, I rehearsed what I wanted to say, determined to remain calm and clear, regardless of how the conversation unfolded. Tyler was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee, his face drawn and tired-looking, with new lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 3 months ago. He stood awkwardly when he saw me, clearly unsure whether to attempt a hug. I solved his dilemma by extending my hand for a formal handshake, which he accepted with visible disappointment. "Thank you for meeting me," he said as we sat down. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I replied honestly. "But we need to have this conversation eventually." Tyler nodded, taking a deep breath. "Mom, I am so deeply sorry. What I did was inexcusable. I betrayed your trust in the worst way, and I'm ashamed of myself." "I want to understand why Tyler," I said quietly. "Not just the financial part, but the lies, the deliberate exclusion. Was having dinner with me really so unbearable that you needed to create this elaborate deception?" He flinched at my directness. "No, it wasn't you. It was never about not wanting to spend time with you. It started because Amanda's parents were visiting, and they suggested we all go to Bellini's since we talked about it so much. We went, and I used your card because honestly we couldn't afford it otherwise. And then Amanda's mom suggested making it a regular thing. Amanda was thrilled because she's always trying to impress her parents. I knew we couldn't afford it, but I also knew you could." He trailed off, looking ashamed. "It sounds terrible saying it out loud." "Because it is terrible, Tyler," I said, keeping my voice level. "You could have simply asked me. I would have understood wanting to include Amanda's family occasionally." "I know," he admitted. "But then it became this whole thing with her cousins and other relatives whenever they visited. The dinners got more and more expensive. Amanda's parents started ordering the priciest wines. I knew you would be upset if you knew how much we were spending. So instead of stopping, you decided to lie to me and exclude me entirely," I concluded. Tyler stared at his coffee cup. "Amanda said it would be easier that way, that you wouldn't notice the charges since you always paid for our dinners anyway." He looked up, his expression pained. "I know how awful that sounds. I let myself be convinced it wasn't really hurting anyone." "It hurt me, Tyler. Not just financially, but knowing my own son thought so little of me that he could lie to my face month after month. That you sat there listening to Amanda's parents mock me and did nothing to defend me." His face crumpled. "I did defend you sometimes, I swear. Just not enough. Not when it mattered. And then it all spiraled out of control, and I didn't know how to fix it without everyone finding out what I'd done." We talked for nearly 2 hours, delving into uncomfortable truths about our relationship, Amanda's influence, and the financial pressures that had contributed to his poor decisions. Tyler revealed that he and Amanda had separated temporarily, with her moving back in with her parents while they attempted counseling. "I'm not blaming everything on Amanda," he clarified. "I made my own choices, but our marriage hasn't been healthy for a long time. We've been living beyond our means trying to keep up with her friends and family, and it's been driving us into debt. What happened with you was a symptom of much bigger problems." As our conversation wound down, Tyler asked the question I had been expecting. "Can you ever forgive me, Mom?" I considered my words carefully before answering. "Forgiveness is a process, Tyler, not an event. I'm working on it. But forgiveness doesn't mean there aren't consequences, or that our relationship can go back to what it was. Trust takes years to build and seconds to break. Rebuilding it will take time if it's possible at all. He nodded, accepting this hard truth with a maturity I hadn't seen from him in years. I understand. I'm committed to earning back your trust, no matter how long it takes. As we prepared to leave, Tyler hesitantly asked, "Would it be okay if we met again in a few weeks? Maybe make it a regular thing, but different than before?" I considered his request. "I think I'd be open to that, but it would need to be something simple. Perhaps coffee once a month, and we each pay for our own." "That sounds perfect," he said, a flicker of hope crossing his face. As I drove home afterward, I felt a curious mixture of sadness and relief. The relationship I had cherished with my son was irrevocably changed, but perhaps what might eventually grow in its place could be healthier based on honesty and mutual respect rather than financial dependence and obligation. Only time would tell. 3 months have passed since that first coffee meeting with Tyler, and much has changed in both our lives. The journey has been anything but smooth, yet somehow I find myself in a place of greater peace and self-awareness than I've known in years. Tyler and I now meet every other week at a small, inexpensive cafe near the public library. Our early conversations were stilted and uncomfortable, filled with long silences and careful navigation around sensitive topics. Gradually, though, we've established a new way of relating, one built on honesty, rather than the polite avoidance of difficult truths that characterized our relationship for so long. I've learned things about my son that pain me to know. He confessed that he had felt smothered by my attention after Paul died, but never told me because he didn't want to hurt my feelings. Instead, he withdrew emotionally, while maintaining the appearance of closeness. When he met Amanda, her stronger personality provided an excuse to create more distance, though he convinced himself it was simply the natural progression of starting his own family. "I never stopped loving you, Mom," he told me during one particularly raw conversation. "But I stopped being honest with you, and eventually with myself about what I was feeling. It was easier to go along with Amanda's complaints about you than to examine why I was pulling away. For my part, I've had to confront uncomfortable truths about my own behavior. Had I been too controlling, too needy, too focused on preserving the memory of Paul at the expense of allowing Tyler to grow into his own life? Had I used financial generosity as a way to keep my son close when he was naturally seeking independence? These questions have no simple answers, but exploring them has forced both of us to take responsibility for our contributions to the breakdown of our relationship. Tyler's actions were wrong, unequivocally so, but the dynamics that led to that breaking point were complex and long developing. The support group has been invaluable through this process. Each week I sit in a circle with men and women who understand the unique pain of family betrayal. We share our struggles, our small victories, our setbacks, and our coping strategies. Some days I'm the one offering wisdom from my own experience. Other days, I'm the one in tears, grateful for tissues and gentle hands on my shoulders. Gloria, my friend from the group, has become particularly important in my healing journey. At 76, she possesses a serenity I aspire to, despite having weathered far worse betrayals than mine. "The pain never completely disappears," she told me once as we shared lunch after a meeting. "But it changes form. Eventually it becomes less like a knife wound and more like an old injury that aches when rain is coming. You learn to live with it, even use it as a kind of weather vane for your boundaries." Her words proved prophetic. The acute anguish I felt discovering Tyler's deception has gradually transformed into something more manageable, a dull ache that flares occasionally, but no longer consumes my every waking thought. In its place has grown something unexpected, a fierce commitment to my own well-being, and a clearer vision of what healthy relationships should entail. This new clarity has extended beyond my relationship with Tyler. I've re-examined other connections in my life, recognizing patterns of people-pleasing and self-sacrifice that served neither me nor those I loved. I've learned to say no without guilt, and yes without resentment. I've discovered that maintaining boundaries isn't selfish, It's necessary for authentic connection. The Europe trip I had planned remained canceled, but I didn't abandon the dream entirely. Instead, I booked a 10-day tour of Italy just for myself. With guidance from a travel agent who specializes in solo journeys for older adults, I crafted an itinerary that honored Paul's memory while creating new experiences uniquely my own. Walking the cobblestone streets of Florence, savoring gelato in a sun-drenched piazza, I felt a freedom I hadn't experienced in decades. Without anyone else's preferences to consider, I could linger in art museums for hours, or change plans on a whim to follow the recommendations of locals I met. I made friends with a Canadian widow and a divorced professor from Australia, sharing meals and laughter with women who understood the courage it takes to build a life alone after expecting to grow old with someone else. One evening in Venice, sitting in a small restaurant as golden light danced on the canal waters, I found myself thinking of Paul, without the usual sharp edge of grief. "You would have loved this," I whispered to his memory. "But I'm glad I came anyway." It felt like a turning point, the moment I truly accepted that my life could be fulfilling, even joyful, despite all its unexpected turns. As for Amanda, she and Tyler ultimately decided to divorce. The final straw came during a counseling session when the therapist asked each of them to articulate their core values. The exercise revealed fundamental differences that no amount of compromise could bridge. Amanda valued status and appearances above honesty. Tyler, perhaps because of the harsh lessons of recent months, had come to value integrity and living within his means. The divorce proceedings have been amicable, with both acknowledging their responsibility for the marriage's failure. Tyler moved to a small apartment and has been working with a financial counselor to address the debt they accumulated. He's taken on additional freelance work, living frugally, to both repay me and establish a more stable foundation for himself. Amanda sent me a letter of apology several months after our confrontation, taking full responsibility for her role in the deception. "I was raised to believe that appearances matter above all else," she wrote. "I now see how that warped perspective led me to make choices that hurt people who deserved better. I'm working to change, but I understand if you can never forgive me." I wrote back a brief but honest response, acknowledging her apology without offering the absolution she seemed to seek. Some relationships can be repaired after betrayal, others are better left behind. My connection with Amanda fell into the latter category, and I felt no obligation to pretend otherwise for the sake of politeness. Tyler has begun dating again recently, seeing a kindergarten teacher named Laura, who seems refreshingly straightforward and unpretentious. I've met her twice briefly and appreciate her genuine interest in getting to know me, without the artificial charm that characterized my early interactions with Amanda. Whether this relationship develops further remains to be seen, but I'm encouraged by Tyler's choice of someone who values substance over appearance. As for me, I've reclaimed joy in unexpected places. I volunteer at a literacy program teaching adults to read, finding purpose in helping others achieve independence. I joined a community garden discovering a talent for growing heirloom tomatoes that I never knew I possessed. I host small dinner parties for my friends, cooking simple but delicious meals that foster connection without pretension or financial strain. Most importantly, I've learned that love doesn't require self-erasure. True love, whether between parent and child, friends, or partners, demands honesty, respect, and mutual care. Love that asks one person to continuously sacrifice their well-being for another isn't love at all. It's obligation, disguised as affection. The healing isn't complete, and perhaps it never will be entirely. There are still days when grief ambushes me, unexpected moments when a memory of happier times with Tyler brings tears, or when seeing a young family together reminds me of what's been lost. But these moments no longer define me. They're simply part of a complex emotional tapestry that includes joy, peace, friendship, purpose, and hard-won wisdom. If there's one lesson I could share from this painful journey, it's this: sometimes you must lose what you thought you couldn't live without to discover the strength you didn't know you had. We are more resilient than we believe, more capable of rebuilding after devastation than we can imagine in our darkest moments. The human spirit has an extraordinary capacity for renewal, especially when we surround ourselves with those who see our worth and respect our boundaries. As I sit here in my garden, watching butterflies dance among the flowers I planted, I feel a profound gratitude for this unexpected chapter of my life. It's not the story I would have chosen, but it's become one I can embrace with an open heart and clear eyes. And where are you watching from today? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories of resilience and growth. Remember, your most painful experiences often become the source of your greatest strength. Thank you for listening, and may you find peace on your own journey of healing.